The first lesson is to face reality, starting with yourself. Max Dupree, formerly of Herman Miller, who wrote Leadership as an Art, said, you know, the first job of a leader is to define reality. That's actually harder than you think, because many leaders are reluctant to face up to the fact they're actually in a crisis. Until you face what the real problem is, you simply cannot solve it. And you can't bring people around you to solve the problem either. And I think a lot of people go into a period of denial where they kind of don't acknowledge the depth of the problem they're in. Until you realize you're in a crisis and are prepared to deal with it. If you just think it's something that's going to go away, it's a nuisance, I can put some Band-Aids on it, you're in trouble. And if you don't recognize the signals. Look how Lehman Brothers and Citigroup didn't recognize the signals when Bear Stearns went under. If they'd recognized those signals early, they'd have been in trouble, but they didn't face the reality. You know why? I think a lot of leaders don't want to recognize their own role in the crisis, that they were a part of creating this crisis. They're so interested in playing the game, if you will, a short-term profitability, keeping the business going while it's there. They're not willing to see that they're about ready to all walk off a cliff together. And so they need to pull back and face that reality and say, we're in trouble. And you know what? I'm part of the problem. And I'm going to acknowledge my part. Now, will you acknowledge yours? Will you get on board with me in helping solve this problem? But until you do that, you can't solve the problem. I think part of this is that we're reluctant to admit our own mistakes. You know, we're reluctant. It's easy to say, you're the problem. But it's hard to see, no, I looked at the mirror and I was the problem. I remember appointing a guy once that later wound up being in a bribery scandal at Medtronic, and I had to fire him. And it was easy to fire him for that, but it was hard for me to say I made a mistake because I didn't check out his values closely enough. I put him in place because he was a hard-nosed, good businessman, but I didn't check out his values. So really, the problem was with me. But that's hard to do, and many people don't want to do that. So how do you look at yourself and say, I'm the problem? And particularly when you're in the role of the leader, it's particularly important that, because otherwise, if the blame goes down below, everyone will freeze up and not pass bad news up if they think they're going to get hooked with it. And that's why I think it's so important for leaders to kind of step up to the problem, and when they do, then they can solve the problem.